percussion on a whole nother level, coming from my mind.
Yuji Sakai from Shakugan no Shana. At the beginning of Shakugan no Shana, people were wondering if Yuji Sakai would ever stop being whiny. The answer lay not too far into the anime as the character started switching to a darker side. His kind and nervous nature were replaced by a colder version of him. He grew more and more distant from his once humane personality. Killing became easier for the same character who criticized Shana for her lack of sympathy. Yuji Sakai turns into a sadistic anti-hero in Season 3 of Shakugan no Shana after merging with the snake of the festival. He is a brilliant example of a character that changed from a protagonist to an antagonist. Shakugan no Shana is a great series despite its slow development. The fact that it took 3 seasons to make Yuji its villain is proof of it. 9 and 12 from Terror in Resonance. What is an antagonist exactly? This is the kind of question you would end up asking yourself after watching the story of 9 and 12. There is no journey of 9 and 12 turning evil. They are terrorists who bomb various buildings in Tokyo while teasing the police department with ridiculously difficult riddles. It almost seems like they are brats trying to play a very risky prank. However, there seems to be more meaning to the terror attacks that the 2 high school boys were throwing towards the world. Terror in Resonance tells the story of 2 kids in masks wanting to speak to the world. To make their voices clear, they use bombs to silence the world first. This is one of the rare brilliant series where the protagonists are the finest anti-heroes I have ever come across. Toshio Ozaki from Shiki. Shiki is a complicated anime that focuses on the grey area between right and wrong. It is difficult to point out what's evil because sometimes things go beyond the measurement of black and white. This brings us to one of the best anti-heroes in anime history, Toshio Ozaki. For many viewers, he was the character that changed from a protagonist to an antagonist in many parts of the story. Toshio Ozaki is a doctor in the series, and like every other typical doctor, he is kind and caring towards his patients who have been victims of Shiki. Changes show up at the doors of his personality when he is unable to save his patients. The frustration of his personality leads him to do things that are questionable from a moral point of view. As more people turn into Shiki, he takes it into his own hands to protect them, but killing the changed ones only meant killing his own loved ones, which depicts a rather evil side of him, despite his intention behind the act. Toshio Ozaki cannot be stated as an evil character or as a hero. Instead, all he can be seen as is a character with a human mind. Tanya Von Der Guruchaf from Youjo Senki. It rarely puts me in conflict about how I should really feel about a character, but Tanya Von Der Guruchaf definitely drops me in confusion as I wonder how I really should feel about her. Tanya was never a character I would want anyone to look up to in terms of personality. She is a psychopath blessed with exceptional magic abilities. She is sadistic and absolutely ruthless, but she deeply cares for the lives of her subordinates. Her ideology roots deep down into the concept of freedom. For her, freedom is the luxury she wants to achieve even at the cost of despising God, who she believes has taken over it. Although Tanya scares me a bit for her sociopathic and sadistic ways, I also understand how she sees the world. She is one of the most complex characters that I have had the privilege to come across. While she is a protagonist, she has every intimidating trait of an antagonist, and I love it. If people enjoy watching cruel anti-heroes more than generic heroes, Youjo Senki is a must-watch. Kaneki Ken from Tokyo Ghoul. It was a terrible fate for Kaneki Ken when he turned into something he hated, a ghoul. He spends almost all of the first season trying to stay in touch with his human side. However, when he accepts the darker side of himself, he strolls down all the way into the dark to save the people he treasured. Kaneki Ken is a fan's favorite anti-hero. Accepting Rize pulls him into a war between ghouls and humans where he chooses to side with the ghouls. He goes to war with the CCG. The character changed from a protagonist to an antagonist pretty quickly over the second season, but it is not easy to dislike him. Though we can see he has left his human side behind, we see the very reason he does whatever he does. It all comes back to square one when we watch series with such a complicated development. While it pushes us to take a side, it also lets us see what each side is fighting for and what is at stake. Tokyo Ghoul has had its share of controversies and mixed opinions, but the very fact that Kaneki Ken was a great anti-hero remains unchanged despite how people felt about the story or the ending. Akira and Ryo from Devilman Crybaby. Both protagonists in the anime Devilman Crybaby show a major decline towards darkness towards the end of the show. For Akira, as a human, he was a crybaby and weak. but after being possessed by Amon, he takes control over his body but becomes incredibly strong. He decides to use his power against demons who were infiltrating the world, but finds himself in a fix when he realizes that humans were turning violent towards demons as well as each other. An ugly side of humanity takes the viewers to see how it could destroy everything that we have built. We see him move more into the dark after the love of his life is killed by people who suspected her to be a devilman. Ryo too had his best interest for humans. He wanted to expose the demons and let people vary. Only in the end, it is realized by him as well as the viewers that Ryo is in fact a manifestation of Satan. Eren Jaeger from Attack on Titan. This could be the most well-known character that changed from a protagonist to an antagonist. Eren Jaeger loathed Titans. All he ever wanted was to kill every last of them, but he realizes that he is a Titan shifter. However, while being a Titan was bad enough, he realizes that things were way worse on the other side of the sea that he was longing to see. In the recent season, Eren has become the biggest threat. Undoubtedly, whatever he does is to save his friends. Everything that he has discovered over the years has led him to take charge of the Eldians and win the wars. Eren goes beyond the point of being called an anti-hero. He is clearly the antagonist, despite whatever reason he turned out to be so. Isayama's genius manga lets us have a perspective of the show. Once again, we find ourselves in conflict as we try to understand what's right and what's wrong and how to differentiate them both. Slaine Troyard from ALDENOAH.Zero. Yet another character that changed from a protagonist to an antagonist is Slaine Troyard from ALDENOAH.Zero. Slaine had a harsh childhood, but he could have become someone better than a villain. He seems like a loyal person at first, and he truly was so. Looking out for the princess was his priority and would have continued to be so. He enforces the political ideas into his mind and becomes the very evil that marks the end of him. On one half, I find this character poorly built, but also at the same time, I feel like his arc catches up to his father's character. He betrays the princess and lets everyone down while bearing the weight of corruption, thinking it was the way to make the princess' dream a reality. Slaine was simply a psychotic lover who let rejection take over his entire character development. Griffith from Berserk. Berserk is a dark fantasy anime whose concepts reach out to dig out the darkest corners of its characters. Griffith was a warrior, someone who brought peace to the kingdom of Midland. After he is tortured, Griffith rises as a femto born from sacrificing his army, Hawks to the Eclipse. While Griffith comes out to be a villain from a protagonist, his reasonings were understandable. Of course, his actions of rape and murder cannot be justified. However, viewers spend a lot of time with this character. He makes a brilliant villain because he has a motive. While as a viewer it feels relatable, it is also very scary because Griffith's character shows us the circumstances that lead people to live their morals. This arc in his character that changed from a protagonist to an antagonist provokes a lot of thoughts.